As like most filmmakers do, Lars von Trier tends to convey his thoughts and beliefs through his films. From the beginning, Lars has always done this. However, his films have progressively become more about Lars than the plot of the films themselves. His films Antichrist and Melancholia echoed what the director was feeling at the time, but they were still more about their own stories than anything else. It's the two films that followed that showed Lars was starting to make films more about himself. Nymphomaniac, on the surface, is about a woman and her sexuality. However, the film is also about the director himself and his critics. The lead was a stand-in for Lars, and the character the lead is talking to seems to be a stand-in for his critics, who he thinks immediately dismiss his art and are quick to give it a simple explanation. In The House That Jack Built, the entirety of the film seems echo Nymphomaniac, but this time the film is about Jack, who believes his killings as art and his career as a serial killer. The film is all about art, the artist, and the critics of the art. I believe Jack is a stand-in for Lars himself, and the string of murders Jack commits is essentially a commentary on the director's career as a filmmaker. The film follows Jack, who talks about 5 murders he has committed to a man named Verge, who again is probably a stand-in for critics of the director's films, and in the reality of the film, he is probably a gatekeeper to heaven and hell. When Jack starts out as a killer, he is a perfectionist. However, as his career progresses, he becomes more sloppy and experimental. As Jack and his killings are a stand-in for Lars and his filmmaking, the director is clearly saying that he thinks he's become less of a perfectionist as a filmmaker and has become more experimental. Jack's sloppiness becomes his undoing as he is eventually tracked down before his next murder is committed. This is perhaps Lars's fear that his experimental nature as a filmmaker will lead him to not being able to make another film. The fourth incident, or killing, is the most obvious and clear statement of the film. Jack is tormenting a woman who represents his detractors. He berates her for not understanding his art, even though he clearly explained it to her. He then goes on a tangent and exclaims that no one will help her as no one cares. This is when the film's surface meaning comes into focus. Throughout the film, it's clearly obvious that Jack is a killer and a danger to everyone he meets. However, no one does anything about it. He is a clear and apparent danger, and society does nothing to stop him. His van is red, which is clearly visible at night. His lies are obvious and poorly told, and he is even outright blatant in his killings, and he sometimes tells people he's a serial killer. I believe this is the director stating that society is too stupid to see the dangers that are very much present and pose a threat to it, and even the few that see it don't really care. The film's ending is odd. As it turns out, Verge has been there judging him the whole time, but it's only recently that he's noticed. What follows next is him traversing hell. He then attempts to go to heaven, but he is unable to and falls into the depths of hell. In conclusion, I think the film can be summarized as a director's attempt to tell the story of his career and an attempt to insult his critics. To me, filmmaking has become a way to vent for him. He probably views it as therapy. Do you agree with my explanation of The House That Jack Built? Comment down below if you do or don't.